Growing up in a small town, I always knew my neighbors and Mrs. Thompson was a bit peculiar. She lived alone in a rundown house at the end of our street, surrounded by overgrown plants and an eerie silence. But it wasn't until I turned 13 that I started to suspect something sinister about her. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was a cold, foggy evening, and I was coming home from school when I saw Mrs. Thompson in front of her yard. She was dressed in a long black cloak and was holding a strange-looking book in one hand, while chanting in a language I couldn't understand. I froze in my tracks, my heart racing with fear. But before I could make a run for it, she turned and looked directly at me with a wicked smile from her face. From that moment on, I couldn't shake off the feeling that Mrs. Thompson was up to something wicked. I started to notice strange things happening around her house, mysterious noises, flickering lights, and an eerie glow coming from her windows at night. My curiosity soon turned into an obsession. I couldn't help but investigate. I would sneak around her house, trying to catch a glimpse of what's going on inside. But every time I got close, I would be hit with a strong force that would send me running back home. It was as if Mrs. Thompson had some kind of dark magic protecting her. But my curiosity only grew stronger, and I couldn't resist the temptation to find out what was really going on. So, one night, I gathered my courage and decided to sneak into the house. I crept through the overgrown bushes and made my way to her front door, my heart pounding with fear and excitement. I turned the doorknob, and to my surprise, it was unlocked. I cautiously entered her house, and the first thing that hit me was the pungent smell of incense and herbs. As I made my way further into the house, I came across a room that sent chills down my spine. It was filled with strange objects, dried animal parts, bones, and jars filled with unknown substances. And in the center of the room, there was a large cauldron filled with bubbling liquid. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Mrs. Thompson was practicing witchcraft. My mind couldn't wrap around the fact that my quiet elderly neighbor was a witch. But then, I heard creaking noise coming from the stairs, and I knew I had to hide. I quickly ducked behind a shelf, my heart racing with fear as I heard Mrs. Thompson's footsteps getting closer. She entered the room and sent straight to the cauldron, mustering incantations under her breath. I watched in horror as she added various ingredients to the potion, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. But as she continued her ritual, I couldn't help but notice that she was struggling. The potion wasn't turning out as she hoped, and she was becoming frustrated. Suddenly, she let out a blood-curdling scream and threw the cauldron against the wall to a fit of rage. I knew I'd have to get out of there before she discovered me, so I started to make my way towards the door. But as I turned to leave, I knocked over a jar and shattered it on the ground, making a loud noise. I froze, my heart pounding as I waited for Mrs. Thompson's reaction. But to my surprise, she didn't come after me. Instead, I heard her mutter curses and then a loud crash as something fell to the ground. I knew I had to get out of here, so I ran as fast as I could, not looking back until I reached the safety of my own home. The next day, I couldn't shake off the feeling of dread that had settled in my stomach. I couldn't believe what I had witnessed, and I was terrified of what Mrs. Thompson might do to me if she found out that I'd been in her house. To my surprise, nothing happened. Days turned into weeks, and I started to relax, thinking maybe Mrs. Thompson had just having a bad night. But then, strange things started to happen. My family's pets would go missing without a trace, and I would go find strange symbols etched into the walls of our house. I knew it had to be Mrs. Thompson's doing, and I was certain she was out for revenge. But things took a dark turn when my parents started acting strangely. They became distant and cold, and I could see the fear in their eyes whenever they looked at me. It wasn't until one night when I woke up to the sound of chanting coming from my parents' room, and I knew for sure Mrs. Thompson put a spell on them. I knew I had to do something before it was too late. With the help of a friend, I started researching everything I could about witchcraft and how to break a spell. We stumbled upon an old book that had instructions on how to create a counter potion to reverse the effects of a spell. With shaking hands, we gathered the ingredients and headed to Mrs. Thompson's house. We snuck in and made our way to the room where she kept her cauldron. We quickly mixed the ingredients and poured the potion into the cauldron, stirring it with all our might. As the potion started to bubble and change color, we can feel the weight of the spell lifting from my shoulders. And just as the potion turned bright green, Mrs. Thompson burst into the room with a look of fury on her face. But before she could cast a spell on us, we threw the potion at her, causing her to disappear in a puff of smoke. We quickly ran out of the house and back to my home, where we found my parents back to their normal selves. From that day on, Mrs. Thompson was never seen again. Some say she moved away, while others believe she met her fate at the hands of her own powers. But the one thing I know for sure is that I will never forget the horrors that I witnessed in my neighbor's house and the power of witchcraft that I never believed in until that fateful night.